Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is a special travel edition of the Hey, Are You Still There podcast. This is Mike.
And Beth.
And this is something that we've done in the past as we've traveled to various countries. We'll come on and do a podcast that just kind of highlights some of the things that we experienced, we saw. We did this last year when we went to Europe with some of the places. And so we just thought that we would do this again this year. Beth is great about taking notes and taking pictures and wonderful explaining all of this. So are you ready, Beth?
I'm ready.
All right. As you're like...
I was looking at the pictures, I was just remembering some of the things we did, some of the cool places we went.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to start off by saying Beth planned this entire trip. So we're going to have a series of travel podcasts, but we just got back. We spent about 2 weeks. I spent 11 days. Beth and our daughter spent 14 days, I guess, or 15 days. We did Hungary, the Czech Republic, Austria, and Germany. And then you guys, Josh and I came home, and you and Maria stuck around and did France. So you're able to knock out 5 countries. We did 4.
Yeah.
So last year, we did Austria and the Czech Republic also, so you can go back and listen to those podcasts, but we were in a different part of the country. This time, obviously in a different part, different experiences. And so we're going to start off with the very first one, which is going to be Hungary. And I'm going to start off just by saying, Beth, you did a remarkable job planning this trip. Beth spent hours and hours planning this and researching and trying to figure out. And if you want to do a trip like this, it just takes a little time. I was actually having a conversation with a guy last night. He was talking about how he loves spreadsheets. He loves figure. He was asking about our trip. And I said, yeah, I was like, my wife had this spreadsheet. She had all this stuff, figure out what we're going to do. And he was like, I would love her. He was like, that's what I do for our trips. And he talked about going to Disney. And I was like, you need a spreadsheet for Disney.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to be waiting in line for hours for one ride. You're not going to get reservations to restaurants, all that kind of stuff. To maximize a really nice Disney vacation, you've got to plan ahead. I'm going to say, if you're going to spend the money to go, and we're in the U.S.,
right?
If you're going to spend the money and go over to Europe for some type of European vacation, you owe it to yourself to do a little research, to plan a little bit ahead, and you did a lot. You went above and beyond. I think I was the one that kept saying, Beth, it's okay. It'll work itself out. It's going to be fine. But you were stressing over a lot of the details. But the trip was flawless. It was super smooth. Thank you, Beth. You did an awesome job. Maybe people will listen to this podcast and want to contact you and hire you as a travel agent. Would you do that?
Oh, yes, definitely. I'll just sell the itineraries I've already done.
There you go. Yeah.
With lessons learned. Because I think the one thing we did learn is, as great as this trip was, it had too many moving parts. It was not as stressful for y'all, but it was stressful for me. Just trying to make sure that you actually make your there were just a lot other connections. And so I got travel insurance and everything, but there were a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong, like one missed train, one thing that delays you, so those were some things that were complicating factors. And I think, to your point, all of our family likes to have some time to wander around, but I feel like you have to have some core activities. You also can't just land in a city. It's, for example, for people who have been to New York City, sometimes I'll be on a trip with somebody and you'll be in Central Park and they'll be like, oh, well, can we go to the 9/11 memorial? And it's like, that's in the financial district. And I know that's only like so many miles away, but that'll take you an hour and a half by the time, so like you can still wander around and enjoy the vibe of a place and have free time. But I think you also have to have some structured anchors in there of things you're going to do and sort of know that. So that was the other balance I was trying to do when I have my spreadsheets and things. It was like, what's one thing we can do each day that could kind of be our bigger activity or our structured activity? And then how is that going to, then how do we wander around, or what does that look like after that?
Yeah, I agree. These trips should be choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
But you got to plan for these adventures. Leave margin, like you said, for the unexpected stuff, good or bad, but hopefully good, that you bump into, I didn't know this museum was here, or hey, let's spend a little bit more time here. This is better than I thought, kind of thing. Leave margin for that. But I think it's best to plot out hey, if we definitely want to do this, whatever it is you want to see, what's around it that I can go ahead and hit also, and then save the one across town for tomorrow.
For another day. Yeah. And I would say the other thing, just super high level, is people would be like, well, why did you start off in Budapest, Hungary? Well, even though we had to pay a lot out of pocket, again, I tried to maximize credit card points. And so I started off trying to think about places we hadn't been. And originally I was going to have us go into London and do Belgium and France. But part of the reason I didn't do that is Central Europe is just so much more affordable. I mean, you can stay twice as long for the money, and as far as like compared to what you pay, in like any of those places like the UK or Belgium or France, generally, they're just so much more expensive. And so we really enjoyed our trip last year, and I'd heard so many people talk about Budapest. So I started off just doing searches, trying to look of where I could get a family of 4 because Jacob wasn't able to go with us on points. And when apparently American Airlines had just added a direct flight from Philly to Budapest, Hungary. And I think that's why I was able to get such a low points value flight, is because it's a brand new route that they had. So we did Greensboro to Philadelphia and then Philadelphia to Budapest. But the other piece with that was we flew out again, too, on an odd day. That's the other trick that we've used a lot. We tend to fly out on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday and tend to fly home on a Tuesday or a Wednesday because those tend to be much cheaper and more affordable flights. So that was kind of how I chose Budapest. And then once I had Budapest, I was like, okay, how can we get home? And so the finding, it was like trying to look for the flights home, and we flew different airlines home and everything. And the other thing that this trip had that was very similar to our other trips is even though each place we visited was in the European Union, which means we didn't have to go through like passport control and all that, each of these countries had different languages and different currencies. So that's a challenge too. None of them, Germany has the euro, but like everybody else had their own currency and their own language. And so that was something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as it is, at least here on the East Coast, when you're flying to Europe, you usually leave late afternoon, early evening because you fly overnight because you're going to land in the morning over there.
Right.
Beth she is militant when it comes to this. She will not let us take a nap. And I'm begging her. I'm like, please, just let us go shut our eyes for an hour or two.
Yeah, we have a picture of Josh sitting at lunch, and literally his head is on his hand and his eyes are closed, and I think he's asleep. I mean, he was so exhausted.
But it does help, I guess, adapt you to the time change and the jet lag if you don't go to sleep. If you just power through. And so I did not sleep. I usually can sleep great on planes, but flying internationally, I've never slept good on one of those planes. Probably because you don't splurge for the good seats.
No, I don't.
And so we land, you keep us awake. We start going. I think we stopped by the hotel.
Did you want me to talk about that super quick, the hotel that we had?
Yes, I was going to get there. So tell us about the hotel. Where was it? What was it? Why did you choose this place?
So the hotel that we found was actually, it was like we gradually had a slow decline in the quality of where we were staying as far as like from the kids' perspective. But it was called Seven Seasons. It's the number 7 in seasons. And I chose it because I did a ton of research. And one thing you'll find is I find it incredibly difficult to find hotels, particularly on points, for more than 2 people. If you're just doing 2 people, it's easy. But add a third person or a fourth person, and a lot of times you're having to get 2 rooms. And somehow in all of my research, I stumbled upon this 7 Seasons. And basically the concept is it's just like a hotel in that every thing that you get is fully furnished, and it's treated like a hotel in that they provide towels and toiletries and stuff like that. But it's essentially almost like an extended stay, one of those hotels that you would go to, where people maybe would stay for business, but much nicer, because when we walked in, it had, well, it was interesting. It had 2 showers, but only 1 toilet. So that was strange. But 2 showers, 2 bedrooms, and the living room had a pull-out couch. So that meant that you and I had our own bedroom, and we had a shower attached to our bedroom, but again, no toilet in there. And then Marie and Josh shared a shower, and there was a toilet. There was also a laundry room, so we had a washer, but no dryer. They tend to, in Europe, in addition to not having air conditioning or ice, as we've talked about on some of the things, tend to not have
But this
dryers.
place had air conditioning.
Yeah, this place had air conditioning, but they didn't have a dryer. They had a drying rack, and it had a kitchen. And a little balcony you could sit on. Now, our balcony didn't have any kind of view or anything like that, but it truly was like just walking into a little apartment and having
Furnished
it there
apartment.
having it there ready for you with our little espresso machine in there. So we had that as well. So I feel like it was really nice. And we were in, I guess they call it their Jewish quarter, which is a more hip, popular part of the town. I find that kind of fascinating because it was the same thing in Krakow. I was like, I wonder what it is about the Jewish quarter of these Central European countries that they become these hip, like dance parties / places to eat, places to stay. But where we were was right in the middle of everything we needed to be.
Very
so as far as
centralized.
location,
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah, very perfect.
Yeah. So it was great.
Yeah.
I found it. And it was clean and had plenty of space and stuff. So it was fabulous.
So we dropped off our stuff, went and I think
We
maybe
ate.
grabbed a bite, and then you signed us up for,
A free walking tour. I find these like basically.
and what's it called? 4x4 or
Yeah,
something?
I think that I've looked them up in different ways. I forget the name. I need to look up what this one is, and maybe I can put links for some of the things. But usually I'll just look up, and I don't go through, what is it called, Viate or whatever. I don't go through those booking sites. But I mean, you just look it up. Like they're called free tours by foot in like the States, but every country, every city that I've been to has had a version of this, and these people work for tips essentially. And they'll tell you when you're signing up how long it is, what you're seeing, and they'll have all sorts of things. Like I always pick the overview, like just the big city overview, but sometimes they'll have like a World War II focused one or history focused one, whatever. They'll have different versions of them. So right after lunch, I had us signed up to do that. The place we ate was it was like Vac Varju or something. I don't know how to describe it, but it was really good and fancy and nice. And it was just, we were exhausted, but it was good to have good food there. And I think we went back and I had my espresso or whatever, and then we went on our walking tour. But right before that, that's when we'd found like a little comic book shop we stumbled into and stuff like that too. But the walking tour was great because these walking tours, like they'll show you, they'll be like, if you like opera, this is the opera house, which we also stumbled into, and we can talk a little bit about how pretty that was. And they'll tell you, they'll do tours, they usually scatter in the history too, like about, like the Buddha side versus the Pest side. And you just get all of these interesting facts. But for me, it just helps me orient myself in the city, because when you're doing all this research and you read about it, it doesn't matter how many pictures you look at or anything. Until you're like standing in a city, you really can't get an idea of it. And it also helped because like then when you wander around later on, you'll be like, oh yes, I know where we are. We went here on the tour. And they'll usually at the end tell you like some good places to get food. They'll tell you a little bit about things that are specific to the country to eat and drink and try and things like that.
Yeah, I feel like you did a old bait and switch on us.
Why is that?
Because you were like, Josh and I, you and Maria were all for this.
Yeah.
And I like them. I like them too. But like I said, I was exhausted. Josh was exhausted. We were the two that wanted to go sleep, and you were
That's
forcing us to go. And I was like, well, how long is this tour? You said an hour. And we were like, all right, I can do this for an hour.
Yeah.
And then we get about 30 minutes into it, and the guy was like, something about yada da da. We got another hour and a half, and I'm like, hour and a half. It was a 2-hour walking tour.
I think it might have even been two.
It may have been 2.5 hours. I think you're right. He did.
I
He
think
said
it
2
was
hours.
2.5 hours.
2.5 of a walking tour, and it was great. He was so informative and
But
knew
you're
his
exhausted.
stuff.
You're right. You're exhausted.
I was tired.
But he took us around. He showed us like where the opera building is, where the parliament is. There's like a statue of this like princess on the river that you rub the knee or whatever. tower for good luck. We saw, of course, the river that went through that. So he told us some food and drink and places to go. So that was really cool because I just feel like, and also he identified, like on the tour, pointed like way up on the hill, you'll see this statue or whatever. And that was something that I don't even think I had identified as something to do one day. So we did learn about something. A lot of the stuff I was like, oh yeah, I've read about this. But then we learned about something that we did that everybody probably enjoyed the most. And we learned about it by doing the tour with him.
Yeah, the tour was great.
Yeah.
And very informative and definitely pointed out some things that we wouldn't have known. I mean, we would have had to like sat down and research the city, look through Wikipedia. I mean, whatever it was,
would have just
history sites, but it was really good just getting the lay of the land.
Yeah, it was just called Free Tour of Budapest. That's what I have. So if anybody wants to ever go to Budapest, it was just called Free Tour of Budapest. And that's what
it's a free tour.
freetour.com was the booking info. That's where I went.
Yeah. And at the end, you tip what you want.
Yep.
And so there's no pressure. It's not like he's sitting there like,
no,
give me this. He's just like, hey, if y'all want to tip me, that's great. Some people paid him with cash, but a lot of people just Venmo'd.
Like Venmo or PayPal.
He had a little QR code or whatever, gave you his information, and you just punch it in and send it to him.
Yep.
And we've done these a couple times, and they've always been great.
Yep. So it was fabulous.
So we finished that, and then what happened, Beth?
We were exhausted, but we wanted to go try. There's this authentic food that I don't know how to talk about. The drink that I wanted to try was Palinka, Palinka. I'll tell you about that in a second. And then the food is like, it's almost like a funnel cake. And then they put sour cream on it and cheese. And I got one that had onions and bacon, but they also had some crepes that were rolled up. But the food I'd had in some, I think like maybe Germany or somewhere before. But so we went to eat at this place, this trendy place, and everybody could kind of get their own thing. And the Palinka was funny because I think I had somebody else pick it up. Like I ordered it and went to the bathroom to wash my hands, and somebody else goes to pick it up. I think I'd misunderstood him. I thought that it was an apricot wine. It comes in different flavors. And he was like plum and cherry and everything. But he's like, the best one's apricot. Oh, no. It came in like a little glass. And it wasn't shaped like a shot glass. It was shaped a little different. But it was this tiny little glass. And apparently it's like 40% alcohol. So I was just like, that was not at all what I was expecting. But was able to try that. It's kind of like a hard liquor, I guess you would say, but had an apricot flavor. So we did that. And then I think after that,
that place was packed.
It was
packed. Booming. And
yes.
I think anytime we travel, I think if you walk into a place or if there's a line or you see it, that's a good sign.
Yes.
Especially if it's the locals that were there. And it seemed like locals were there.
I will say the only thing too, this tour, I didn't realize it, but was only of the pest side, as we say, the pest side, because there was the Buddha and the pest. And so this was on that side of the river.
The main city side.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I think I finally let y'all go back and shower and
went
go to
back
sleep.
home, showered, and went to sleep.
Yes.
It was glorious.
Yes.
I woke up the next morning, and we had our curtains pulled in our room, but it was one of those deals where the sunlight was obviously coming out from the sides of it, and it was lit up enough. And I'm like, oh, we slept kind of late.
Yeah.
And I picked up my phone to see what time it was, and it was 4:40 in the morning.
And it was the sun was
and I was like, what in the world? I looked outside, and it was like bright as could be.
Because it also stayed bright until like 10 at night.
So I did not know that, and so I looked it up on my phone, and sunrise was like 4:35 in the morning.
Yeah.
And they have at least this time of the year in June, 15 hours of daylight. And so it stays dark. It stays light until 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And then, and then it's 4:30 in the morning.
Maria and I,
you can go out and just do your thing at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, since Maria and I like to optimize our amount of time, that gives us the ability to truly do
places
that.
usually don't open till still 8 or 9.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you would do for 4 hours, but you can do stuff.
You can do it.
You can walk around while everybody else is sleeping.
Yeah.
If you're waking up early due to jet lag and time difference.
So we decided then that morning we would go to breakfast and everything. And we went to a little coffee shop cafe. And one thing that's interesting too, because Maria was just every day oh, I have to have my coffee. But she likes now she's kind of like this coffee snob now that she works at Dutch Bros.
She's not a coffee snob. She's a syrup snob.
Yeah, because she likes
just
flavors.
Likes these sweet,
yes,
milkshakey type fraps and stuff.
So every time we would go to and what they have in Europe is not that. I mean, at least not in Budapest. They had, of course, your typical espresso lattes, those types of things, but very rarely with any syrups, which is the way I drink my coffee, is like that. And you and I talked about, too, one thing that's so interesting about these European countries in general, in addition to not having ice and oftentimes not having AC, which ours did. But you in your rooms or when you're out, if you're at a hotel, there's always those coffee machines. There's not like somebody bringing a pot of coffee. But we ate at this little bakery coffee shop. It was cute. It was good. But we decided that day we were going over to the Buda side. So we crossed the river. We took a car there, and I wasn't expecting. We went over this bridge. And there for Uber, their version of Uber, they have Uber, but they have Bolts as well, is what they call them. And they're usually better priced than Uber. And so, because I'd read, your best bet was to get a taxi from the airport if you were exhausted and had luggage, which we were, but then to do those Bolts the rest of the time. So we went across the bridge. They have these lion statues on the side, and there's a ton of people walking on the bridge. So we were like, we'll have to do that when we come back. And you go through almost like this underground little tunnel thing, which we walked under on our way back. But then you just come out and you're on this historic side, and they call it the castle or whatever up there. But it's really, there's a very, very large church. There's a statue, and you can pay to go on this wall. And when you go on that wall, we got these great view pictures that where we could just look and see the river and see the Pest side and get all these great pictures. So that was the first thing we did was to kind of pay to go on that little wall. And I think it was €7 or something, but it was less crowded because you paid to get on it. Plus you just got some great shots of all of the things around there. One thing that is hard is in a lot of these countries, and I was used to places having the machines you pay for the bathroom, €1 usually. Maybe 2. But most of the time in a lot of the other countries we've gone to, they'll have a tap and pay just like you would at the subway or something for your cell phone. But I went down and there was a place and they were cash only. So in that case, then you have to find a coffee shop or something and go get a drink and go to the bathroom. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to have a bathroom break. But so we did that and then went into their large church that was there as well, because that's one of the things that's so neat in all these European cities. You just drive and there's no I shouldn't say there's none, but there's not a house and then drive a mile in a house. It's everything's built you'll see a steeple or something. And sometimes it's a small church, but there's always some church sort of in the center and a little square or whatever, and then the little village around it. But we went to tour that, and then we had decided, I'd read a lot about some different things, and one of the things we wanted to do, too, while we were over there was there was a tower you could go, when we bought the wall thing, there was a tower you could climb up in. And I laughed because we went in the church, but the tower wasn't attached to the church. I thought the tower would be. And the church was beautiful, like so many of these churches are, and with the great statues and all of that. It was gorgeous. But then when we went to the tower, it's of course a million steps, and it's this spiral staircase. And there were times when the stairs, and of course there's no escalator or elevator, we're having to go up. And as you're going, there's some little places you can stop, but there's also people coming down. And I mean, it is a tiny spiral staircase, and at parts it's dark and stuff. So that was just kind of an interesting experience going up in the tower.
There's definitely places that you go to in Europe that here in America, OSHA would never approve of, or whatever it is, organization that says this is safe for people to do. They would not let that happen.
Because these were just stone steps in a circular and stones on the wall and no handrails, nothing. There's nothing to hang on to. But we got some great pictures. And then we found this place to eat. And that was where Josh got to have probably one of his favorite meals. He got It was essentially a bear stew. And like, I think I got some fish and things, and the waiters and waitresses were great. But the area where we were was unnaturally chilly and windy. But we sat outside, as many people do in these European restaurants, which is one of the things that I think makes it so fun, is like the way everybody sits outside and just enjoys kind of the people watching and stuff. And then we went to the hospital in the rock. And I had read about it, but photos aren't allowed inside. And so I'd read that it was a really cool experience. It was something that, like, you couldn't just do, you know, like anywhere else, essentially. And basically, I mean, how would you describe it? It's
just a historic hospital from World War II, right? That they had, maybe even World War I. I think it was.
Oh, yeah, it was around in World War I and World War II.
Where they, I guess when it was created as a hospital for injured people,
right?
It eventually became not just a hospital, but it was like a whole, like, for anybody seeking.
Yeah, it was like they said, it was a very well-known hospital with great care, but then it became, during the wars and things, like overfull and overcrowded.
And it was, it's full of, you had everything. You had operating rooms, you had dental rooms, you had, it was just all,
but it's like underground. And that's why it's the hospital in the rock, because you walk in.
It's fascinating.
And you can't see it. So you kind of walk down these steps, because Buda's kind of hilly, And so you walk down these steps and you go in these doors, and then you go down into sort of these like concrete walls, and it's like you can't even imagine what it was like for people.
It was a fallout shelter also. That's what it became.
Which was the most exciting part for the kids, because we've watched the show Fallout, and Maria's played and Josh have played that video game. And I think for them, seeing the part that became a fallout shelter was really interesting to them. But in some ways it was funny, because you walk through and they just have these like wax statues or something that of course don't look very realistic, but help you see what it was like. Because you go through, and when you're seeing the hospital part, you're seeing the operating room, or you're seeing this room with just wall-to-wall bunk beds where you can imagine all of these sick people in there. They had to show us like the air circulation system and how they would turn that on. So it was fascinating from the standpoint of like this hospital that was used during the World Wars. And I've read some World War I stuff, but a huge World War II person. So anything related to that I find fascinating. But I also found the nuclear fallout piece fascinating, because he even told us stories like, of course, it never had to be tested, but like they had decided they were going to use it as that. And he said, so for one of the protocols was going to be, if there ever was a nuclear bomb drop there, people would have to come in, take off all their clothes, shave their head, and even pull out their eyelashes or something. It was crazy, and he was like, do we know if this would even be effective? No, we haven't tried it. But like, you just got to see the progression of the usage of this building, and just imagine like some of the doctors and people, like there was a child born there that came back, and there's a picture of her from being born in that hospital. There were some kids that grew up just playing in there, whatever, because their parents worked there. It was really, really neat.
Yeah, it was a cool little excursion that's there on that side, historic side.
Yeah, and then that was when we came out, and it looked like rain was coming, and so we had our umbrellas and everything. But that was when the bridges that we walked across that had like the statues and the lions and stuff, we were like, okay, we're gonna walk back across that way. And so we walked back we walked through the tunnel too, and that was a longer walk than it looked like it would be, because we decided we'd walk back through the tunnel and walk over the bridge to the Pest side. And that was the night that we got the, what do we call these things? Chimney. Yeah.
Chimney something. But.
And yeah, that's the thing that's essentially like a churro, but kind of rolled around to be like a ice cream cone.
Well, it looks like a PVC pipe.
Yeah.
Because it's hollow on both ends. Unless you get something like ice cream in it, then they close it up. But naturally, it's just like a pipe. But it's made out of like churro type stuff.
And then they had different flavors. I think Maria got dark chocolate or something. And
I can't remember what I got, but they'll put some type of like syrupy thing on it.
Those cookies they give you on like the Delta flights, Biscoff or something or whatever, I got that cream or whatever in mine. And it was good, but it was so rich. And they had said you could do the ice cream. We didn't do that. I think Maria went back another night and did the ice cream. But yeah, so and we did that night too before going back to
and went back and crashed.
Yeah, there was no like, let's all sit together, because I was worried about like Josh sleeping in the little living room area. Like, what if we need to be in there to like do something together? We didn't have to worry about that. I also, one thing that became the stuff of legends was me in a market. I'm a sucker for finding a market and going in, because I always wanted to buy like the bottled water, buying the things like that.
But let's pause. What she's talking about is what we would call here in America a convenience store. It's a 7-Eleven. It's a Exxon, except without the gas. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's just a convenience store. But in those settings, you're just like, ooh, a market. Let's go in and buy a Coca-Cola, because we can't do that here.
Well, one thing that happens is, I think we talked about this a little in the other podcast, is they'll bring you bottled waters and things at restaurants, but they just don't seem to drink as much liquids as we do, you know? And so I would go in and buy my big bottles of water. But Maria really wanted to try some different candies and stuff. But Maria basically would buy different flavors of Kit Kats and bring those back. And we would open some up and I'll share them.
So you have some crazy European flavors and stuff that we don't have here.
Yeah, there was like a cookies and cream, some type of dark chocolate. There was one that was in white chocolate with like some kind of like stuff throughout it. I don't know, but they were really interesting. So we would do that too. We would try the different candies and stuff like that. But also they have Aldi and Lidl there. And when you go in, it's like a maze. You can't get out. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Like you wander in and it's like you're a mouse in a maze trap or whatever, because there's only one way through all the aisles and it's very cramped and very confusing. But we had that experience too. But yeah, so the next day we went to eat at this little cafe that had like, it was all decorated, super cute and things. But I had decided, I talked everybody into going to two things. One was, I think it's called the House of Terror. I have it in German here. I was looking on my phone. Yeah.
That's what it was.
But you couldn't have photos there either. But basically what the House of Terror was, and I think that's the day we also went to the synagogue, and then we also did our hike, because we had 3 full days there. And so the House of Terror was basically all about the history of sort of the occupation of Hungary. And Hungary was a very poor country, and basically just found themselves, whether they were under the occupation of like the Austrian Empire and one of their leaders, and then eventually occupied by Nazi Germany. And then the Nazi Germany's gone, and here come the Soviets to occupy the country. And you just go through these rooms and they just have photos and kind of a historical
and the house that you're
travel through
building
time.
that you're in is where they held, prisoners of war. And, there was murders and executions.
And there.
I mean, it was concentration camp-like, except it was a building.
And it was pretty horrifying. And the reason I say that is because you go through that, and like I've read, again, in some of my World War II books and stuff, you read about some of the things like that the Nazis did, but then you also read about what the Soviets did. And it gave some great perspective too, because they would talk about how the Nazis, it was essentially about racism and things like that. But with Soviets, it was more like classism and about a class system. But just the way the Soviets had people so paranoid to the extent that family members would be spying on each other, or the torture that they do, or all the things that they were trying to eliminate, everything from religion to other types of activities, the things that you could be severely punished for, and the people trying to stand up and rise up against it. And I think it was fascinating to see that history because, and we can talk about this on another one when we talk about maybe our 2 side trip tours, but in those conversations, just talking about what that does to a culture as far as like your view of the world, maybe how paranoid you feel about things, maybe how open you are with people, how willing you are to speak up about different things, just how that influences so strongly. The other thing I can't remember, I think I'd left it out before we did that. The night before, I think, was when we'd done the cruise, wasn't it? They're all kind of, my dates are kind of messed up on my pictures. But we did do a night cruise too of
No, that was Saturday night.
Oh, so keep going with the
Yeah.
yeah.
So, it was after the hike. It was at night.
Yeah, but did we go to the hike or the synagogue after? We went to the synagogue next. Yeah, because it was right down the street from we did the House of Terror that took like an hour or so.
Yeah.
And then we went to the synagogue, which was also fascinating because it was very ornate. And so as soon as you go in, as men have to have their head covered. So Mike had to wear, you had your hat, but Josh had to wear.
That's the first time I've ever been in church where they've been like, you
please
must wear
put on your hat. Yeah. And then Josh had to put on one of the little things they gave him to cover his head. And
yarmulke. Is that what it is? What is it?
I don't know I can't remember what it's called, but he had that on. And a lot of the churches may be strict in Europe, I feel like, about how you dress and covering your shoulders. But this was probably one of the most strict religious places that we've been in as far as women not showing any shoulders, having your head covered, having all of those things. And the one reason it was fascinating is we'd gone into a synagogue when we were in Krakow, Poland. It was still round, that concept and stuff, but it was very just plain, and this synagogue was designed during a time, they said, when they really wanted to show people hey, Jewish people in our faith aren't that different than, the Christian faith. And so they made the church the synagogue much more ornate. And there's a lot more art and gold and stuff. And apparently too, the guy that did our little tour told us that you aren't supposed to have music, but they had somebody that would play, was it a piano or an organ or something on the other side? Mm-hmm. And so the rabbis had declared it wasn't violating any laws if you just happened to hear this organ music through the walls.
Yeah.
So we toured that and got some good history.
And that one is first or second largest in Europe?
I think it's it's massive. And so it's really big. And so that was a neat experience, I think, just to see that. And they had some monuments and stuff out there. And then we also did our little hike, which turned out to be Marie and Josh's probably favorite. We took a bolt. I don't even know how to describe it. There's there's a statue up on this mountain.
It's this monument.
And halfway up it is the monument thing.
And then at the very top is the Citadel.
Yeah.
Where it was basically a guard tower and wall where they could look to protect Budapest.
And so when we were walking up, that hiking there is interesting. It's urban hiking, I guess you'd say, because you're on these paths where, there are times that the trees and stuff, and it's really quiet. And then you look over and it's oh, there's Budapest in the distance and the river and all the, things. And so we were able to get some good pictures there. There was the monument and then going all the way to the top to see that. And I think the kids just loved getting out, walking. It was a beautiful day that day. It was actually really warm. And so we were able to get out and see that, plus get some more good views of the city and stuff. And so that was a really neat experience too. But let's see, and that's the night we did the dinner cruise. Yeah. And not dinner cruise, just the cruise. I'd agonized over whether we'd want to do a sunset cruise or a nighttime cruise, but we just chose to do the one when it was dark because the Parliament Building, if you look up anything about Budapest, you're usually going to see a picture of their Parliament Building. It's one of the biggest too. I can't remember on their tour, they told us that they made it 3 inches bigger than some other one or something like that.
At one point it was the biggest in Europe, and then somebody else made theirs 3 feet bigger.
Yeah, or something like that, where it's just
but it's massive and it's beautiful.
Yes, it's lit up. And so on our little cruise, we were able to go through and they would tell you, they basically went up one side of the river and came back down the other side of the river. And, you could listen to audio. They had these audio headsets that you could program to your language. And we were just able to get a lot of really cool pictures and stuff on that cruise. So that was a lot of fun. I thought it was really pretty and neat. And then we went one night too, they have these things called Jewish ruin bars. And one of them was open even during the day to have a farmer's market. But basically they're called ruin bars because there were all these buildings, as you can imagine, in these areas that during like bombings and things got destroyed. So instead of trying to fix up all of it and fix it, they put like bars in these. And some of these, they call it a bar. It might be a restaurant attached to like just outdoor seating, and there's a bar in the middle where people can buy drinks. Some of them have crazy lights and dinosaur heads and just crazy stuff.
It was like a 3-story food court for bars.
Yeah.
And it was wild. It was packed full of people.
Yeah.
They just repurposed these old damaged buildings.
Yeah.
It was chaotic.
And they decorate it like with vintage old things, anything you can find. And so like you walk in and
every bar has its own little
its own
personality.
Yeah. Like it's almost like people, I guess, rent space. I think about like where you sell your comic books, almost like you rent a booth.
It's like an antique mall for bars.
Yeah, but then they'd have these common seating areas, and there literally was like fluorescent lights and a big dinosaur head or something in one of them, and disco balls in one. I mean, I can't describe what it was like walking through.
And so many people.
Yeah, and so that was the biggest, most popular, but we walked by some others, and they're all over the Jewish Quarter, like right down the street from where we were. And they may be they're more just like, again, an outdoor seating bar with a little bit of food and some drinks. But they're usually the seating, like the chairs and the table and stuff, are really quirky and different. So we did some things like that too, that culturally, that's not something we would have at home. One other thing, when we'd gone to Austria, one of the things Josh loved so much there was their Natural Science Center. So we took a special trip to the Museum of Natural History, or what have you, in Budapest. Of all that we did, I would say that'd be on the list of like, don't do. It just so happened that we were there on Sunday, so it was free to get in, thank goodness. It didn't have air conditioning. It was very hot. And I mean, it was nice, I'm sure, if you live there, but this is not something as a tourist that you should be like, hey, I'm going to put that museum on my list of must-do things in Budapest, because when we all went through it, we basically just laughed at it, because there were just parts that were just, they were something. But there were some rooms, like they had this Noah's Ark with like this ark you would walk in and these animals going up to it. They had a lot of random birds and things. And we sent a picture to Jacob, and he had said, that's what happens, I guess, when you don't have laws and controls around who can like get birds and like stuff them and do whatever with them. So we did that, and it was interesting. And then I don't know how, if we walked down or made it back, but we ate outside at this place where Maria and I had seen it on the menu, either strawberry soup or raspberry soup. And it turned out to be kind of like a smoothie in a bowl, but like thinner. And it was delicious. But we found this place. It was, I don't know, how would you describe this outdoor? Remember, it was like, inside is a museum, but it's almost like a horseshoe shape.
Yeah, well, it's like what I would call a skateboard ramp.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Massive,
like
massive.
And in one end is one type of museum. The other end is another museum. But in the middle is just a giant garden with trails and stuff. It's indescribable until you're there. It is a massive, but it kind of looks like, if you imagine a really smaller scale, the way, like, I guess they call it a half pike, where it's just kind of and skating up there, or whatever it is, where you go down the wall, goes across, then it goes back up, then you go back down and go back up, Right. That's what this looked like, except
it's massive.
Gigantic.
And so we walked up one side, you walk up steps, and then inside it's like grass and people sitting and having picnics.
And we didn't do the museums on either side.
No.
But just outside, there was just tons of people just hanging out.
Yeah, just like, and there's like little paths through some of the grass in the natural area. It's really hard to describe, but it was fascinating. And then we wandered back to this area that also had some other museums that we didn't go into, but had these beautiful buildings and things where we got some pictures, but they were having some sort of massive, I don't know how many, wine festival
Yeah,
kind
some
of thing.
kind of wine festival. But that was there. That was that castle.
Yes.
Like whatever the castle was. I don't remember the name of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's
But it's not now it's a museum inside,
Yeah.
because you were like, why didn't we tour this castle? But it's a castle
well,
that
it's
was
something like
converted to...
agriculture.
Yeah, it's like the something
Yeah.
museum. It was something that we didn't have time in our days to do.
But it's gorgeous.
It's beautiful on the outside. And then with this wine thing, what was so fascinating, we didn't drink any or anything, but it was just walking through and seeing it, because they have the same concept they have in their Christmas markets. So at the Christmas markets, every market you go to has a unique like cup or whatever. And so you can, like, they'll be like, if you want to have your hot wine or whatever, you can pay $20. And if you return the cup, you essentially might get like $8 of that back or something, like a deposit. Well, this place, it was fascinating because they got like all these wineries. You had a sign that showed where they all were, and you purchased a glass. I can't remember what it cost, if it was 10 euros or something. And then you just took your same glass around to wherever you wanted to try the wine. And you would purchase the wine and try it, and they'd rinse it out for you and stuff. So it was a really fascinating concept, because they were also using it as a fundraiser, because there were just people everywhere, like hanging out, having picnics, like sitting, drinking wine, reading books. I mean, it was a really neat just kind of thing to see what they did. And then that was the night that we did split off briefly, because Josh he loves public transportation in the different places. So we were going to try to figure out how to use the bus, which in the end, when I finally figured it out, was simple, but it was very stressful. Getting the bus and figuring out, basically you and Maria walked to where you're going by the time Josh and I got on the bus and got there. But in all these countries, what's confusing is you can sometimes buy paper tickets, but you have to validate them. And so in every country's train, bus, all of that, they're all a little different. They all have their own little quirks of how you do it. Because I think we talked about in Krakow, Poland, how based on where you were going, it's timed. It's like, as long as you get off the bus on this ticket in like 30 minutes or whatever, there's a countdown, you pay this amount or whatever. Well, with these, you could also buy day passes and all these things. But the problem is, and the reason I got so paranoid, is if you fail to appropriately validate your ticket, they'll charge you like 150 euros. I mean, and there are people all over Facebook and stuff that this has happened on trains and buses. So like I ended up I'd wanted to buy paper tickets because there's usually a machine, you validated it. Well, with this one, I ended up having to get it on the phone. So then I had to scan a QR code, but I got Josh's on my phone because he didn't have cell service. So I was trying to scan his. So that was quite the adventure. We didn't do that until the last night. If I'd been using the bus the whole time, I know it would have gotten really easy. But mostly what we did in Budapest, once we got to an area, it was very walkable. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty, for a family of 4, maybe this isn't as environmentally friendly, but oftentimes a Bolt is the same price almost as trying to figure out the public transportation for 4 people.
And I think it just saves time. When you're there and you have if we'd have been there a whole week, we could have paced
I would have
ourselves
figured
better.
out all
But
that.
when you're only there for 3 days and you want to get from point A to point B as quick as possible,
right?
You just got to take a Bolt.
And
they're super inexpensive.
Yeah.
Like $5, and you're there. And so we bolted everywhere.
Yes.
And I think it just saved us a lot of time. And they bolt to a certain part, drop us off, and you had it mapped out. Here's all the things in this area that we're going to do today.
And that's where it goes back to kind of that New York City concept. It was kind of like, okay, if we're going to be on the Buddha side, we're going to make sure we see the church and the hospital under the rock. When we're in the Jewish quarter, we were going to make sure we saw like the House of Terror and the synagogue, but then the rest of the time we wandered around. And like one of the days we stumbled on a flea market. Apparently, one of the things coming back is just like Josh used to say that he likes tangible media, and he would walk around and have our old cassette players or albums, film cameras and or old digital cameras. That's really what's come back. Like there was a guy set up for hundreds of euros selling like one of those point and shoot crappy cameras that you and I had that, there was a delay when you took the picture and the pictures weren't that great. And Maria was looking and agonizing about buying one. I was like, what is happening right now? But she's like, oh, the pictures just look cooler and they look vintage. And I'm like, it's just like with music. We talked about how
albums will come back. Now CDs are coming back.
Yeah, because with albums, we didn't want them back in the day because they might be scratched or not as high quality. And now this with the pictures. But that was some of the things because we built in that extra time. Like our little hike was something we stumbled on. The going through that market was something we stumbled on. That U-shaped thing that we're not describing very well, like a skate park. That was something we stumbled on without research. So it was really nice kind of having that balance of like, here's the core anchor things that we're going to do. And then these are the things that, this is your time to wander around and do whatever you want. And so, but I liked the city. It was, the Buda side did feel quiet. I'm not quite, they were trying to tourist. So to say it's quiet, it's crazy. But all those tourists were concentrated into a very small area, like around that wall and the church, cathedral or whatever. And it just felt like more historic, I guess, than the Pest side. But the Pest side seemed to be the side that had a ton of restaurants and like those Jewish ruin bars and like people, if you wanted to do stuff. One thing we didn't get to do because they sold out, we were going to do an opera house tour. We went into the opera house and saw it, and it was beautiful inside and got some pictures, but they sold out of that. And we did not do an inside the Parliament tour. Some of those things might sell out months in advance, and that was just one of those things I didn't know if we'd want it and like it enough. And I think I feel like what we did ended up being really good for us there.
Yeah,
so,
if we'd have had a fourth day, the Parliament may have been cool, but what we saw was really good.
Yeah. So
if you have 3 days in Budapest, contact us, and Beth has an itinerary for you.
Yeah, I can tell you what to do.
For a price, right?
Yes.
Maybe this could be like your tour by foot. Just make a donation.
Yes, make a donation, and I will send you my itinerary that has, because I even had some plans too, like if the weather's bad, then you could do this or some different things like that. But we all agreed. I think we all thought it was a cool city, and the place we stayed was great. And like we said, very walkable, pretty. The river going through it's really cool. There's like boats all the time. That was the other thing. We were so shocked. I know we're wrapping up on time, but when we went down to the river that night to get our night cruise, we were like, whoa, what is happening? Because it was like all up and down the river. There was like people playing music and
from
dancing,
one bridge to another,
and
just bands, DJs.
Yes, yeah, and we didn't see that during the day, but at night,
came out at night.
It was happening. Yeah, so because we had to keep walking. So
there is a nightlife there.
Yeah, there's definitely a nightlife.
So if you're younger than us, you might enjoy that.
Yeah, but if you're old like us, you probably just would skip that part.
Yeah, just going to bed. Well, cool. Yeah. Well, this has been very informative, I believe.
I hope so.
Budapest, Hungary.
Yes.
Hungary. This is.
Oh, and how do you spell it, Mike?
With an A.
Yeah,
I found
there
out.
you
That's
go.
Crazy.
Yes. Throwing in those extra letters.
Beth thought I was an idiot when I told her I thought it was spelled like I'm hungry. So, Hungary, Budapest, Hungary, definitely worth the visit. So hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast. We're going to be coming up with the next one pretty soon. Part 2 of our trip, the Czech Republic.
Yes.
So we'll do that one and highlight that trip next. But until next time, this has been Beth and Mike, and this is...
Hey, are you still there?